Wow, today is a day in the gaming industry. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Downward Thrust video, and today I'm very excited to bring you a very interesting, unexpected video regarding Activision and Bungie splitting up. And I'm pretty sure that nobody saw this coming. After an almost 10-year, very tumultuous relationship, the two companies are just saying hasta la vista and going their separate ways. I think we all know by now that any company that merges, gets acquired, or comes in contact with Activision's strange aura, they just turn into something else. And I think Bungie most certainly was one of those studios. Bungie's history as a product company is a pretty interesting one, actually. They started off in 1991, and then they were acquired by Microsoft in 2000 for the Halo franchise, but then they split off from Microsoft in 2007, but Microsoft kept the Halo franchise intellectual property to themselves. So after that, they started their next project, which was Destiny, and then they struck a 10-year deal with Activision in 2010. But of course, that deal is coming to a quick end 1 year before it was supposed to end. You typically don't see that in the corporate world, where you have a long-term partnership on the line with a lot of money that's been invested by both companies, and then all of a sudden, before the contract expires, one of the companies just says, you know what, I just want out. We're gonna split up. The only time that'll happen is if something major happens within the relationship of those two companies, which causes one of them to just go overboard and want to end the contract. Shown on the screen right now is a very crafty way to make it seem like there was really nothing wrong with the relationship between Bungie and Activision. I think we all know better now. The statement says that they have enjoyed a successful 8-year run and would like to thank Activision for their partnership on Destiny. But that probably couldn't be further from the truth, because as we all know, the problems that surfaced with Destiny and Destiny 2 go way back, even before the development started with the original Destiny. Within the confines of Activision and Bungie, there have been canceled projects, there's been content that's been scrapped, there's been corporate firings, there's been harassment suits, lawsuits, backlash against the community for over-monetization, cut content, DLC practices that were predatory. They've done pretty much everything, and I think we have to understand that most of it was probably predicated by the publisher, which is Activision. Because when we look at the publisher versus the developer relationship, typically what happens is that the developer focuses on game development, while the publisher focuses on how the construct of the marketing, the PR, and the overall vision of the game is. If there's something that they don't like about where the game is heading, they can actually put their foot down because they supply the funding for the game, and they can say, you know what, you're going to go in a different direction whether you want to or not. They have the final say, the publisher does. And one of the things that really hurt Destiny as a franchise is Activision's influence on the rotation or scheduling of said games and content and expansions, which they demanded Bungie to release content every single fall season, whether it was a new game, a DLC, or an expansion pack. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this was literally written into the contract that they signed, or at least amended into it later on after the initial acquisition. This put some immense pressure on Bungie to continually work on the game while adding new stuff, and I think they just reached a breaking point, probably within the first expansion of Destiny 2, where it was crystal clear that these pressures were weighing down on Bungie so much that they were threatening to collapse the company from within. I mean, there was Bungie, forced like a slave to put out this kind of content in this kind of quantity. So what did they do? They started doing yearly roadmap plans to make sure that they have everything planned out, but then they couldn't really fulfill the plans. And once that happened, Activision started to buckle down on the demands for the company even more, and then the community started backlashing as well. So what did they do? They started to recycle content and lower the scope at which they were going to provide future updates for Destiny and Destiny 2. Once they figured out that wasn't going to work, then they moved on to aggressively monetizing their games, probably to acquiesce the stringent demands of Activision once again. They had to do something. The player bases were declining, initial sales were declining, some of the expansion packs were pretty bad, and with a company behind them that was not giving them the support they needed, they just ran out of options. But Bungie isn't a saint either. They did plenty of stuff during the course of both Destiny 1 and 2 to garner ill will as well from the community. So yeah, it was just this weird combination of two companies with completely different ways of making games and idealisms that came together that were forced to make a single product with different perspectives, and what turned out wasn't too great. I lament what happened because I was the biggest Bungie fan growing up, playing the Xbox and playing the classic Halo Combat Evolved, as well as the sequels too. But even during the latter part of Halo's lifecycle, you could see some of the bad stuff coming in from Bungie and Microsoft too when Activision was completely out of the picture, including some of the loot boxes, the terrible storyline for Halo 5, and the general sensation that Halo was just becoming something else than it was supposed to be, which is exactly what happened to Destiny. I think if you ask any gamer out there, they will most certainly remember the initial trailer or pre-release content for the first Destiny. That first trailer, I think you remember it. As Bungie's second project, it was like, holy crap, they're gonna take this to the next level. But it really didn't turn out that way. I remember popping it in for the first time and I was just sorely disappointed beyond just the precision of the gunplay. Kind of everything about the game just screamed it wasn't ready, things went wrong in the studio, which they did, as we learned later on, and the future of the game just looked very bleak. The game felt thin. I don't know how else to say it, but on top of that, there were so many little stupid things that happened that really made you question what the hell they were doing at that studio. Like, why is this content being locked off? Why is this content being resold? Why do I have to pay for the game twice? Just these weird issues that continue to grow, and they were only exacerbated during some of the expansions for Destiny 2. I don't want to go into it too much because, well, I think it's all been done to death by now, but I think the point remains. Without a unified and solid team behind this game, chaos just ensued behind the scenes, and at every turn, Destiny and Destiny 2 just managed to drop the ball, not on just the gaming industry, but the community as well. And today, as Bungie and Activision split up, I think the main question is, who really wanted the partnership to end? Because on one hand, you have Activision, who has had probably one of the worst years a publisher could possibly have in 2018. The general goodwill from the industry, as well as their stock price, has hit an all-time low, sinking down so far into the dirt, you can barely see it right now. And on the other hand, you have Bungie, which has been tethered to the publishing nightmare of Activision for such a long time, doing their bidding. Clearly, Activision needs to make some major movements in their company to fix their business from the ground up. And clearly, Bungie needs to start fresh to get a good game under their belt, a solid reputation, and the goodwill from the industry back on track. So I'd imagine this is actually a pretty mutually beneficial end of the partnership. Both brands, enterprises, companies, whatever you want to call them, are tarnished right now, and they need some time to rebuild these reputations and the games they put out. And the only way to do that is to steer as far away from each other as humanly possible. So if we look at it in this fashion, I think it's good for both parties to end this partnership. Much like it might be good for both parties to end the partnership of Activision and Blizzard, but that's a topic for a different video. As it stands right now, Activision and Bungie are going to go their separate ways, and Bungie is going to retain the Destiny franchise. So this is actually probably a plus for the Destiny community. And I gotta say, I am really happy for the Destiny community because they have been put through the ringer with these two games, especially given how much support they've continued to show this company and how much they've put up with all the BS. And some of them still sticking around to enjoy Destiny regardless of its quality. But just looking at the public relations statement that I have on the screen right now, I just get this weird feeling that they're trying to save face and just say, oh yeah, all was honky-dory during this 10-year span, everything's fine, they treated us great, I can't wait to take Destiny out, I want to thank Activision for all their support. I feel like this is complete and utter nonsense bullshit. But it is a smart thing to do, to go out with your head held high and at least trying to be humble and respectful to the company that did work with you for such a long time. I'm just not so sure how much support the common audience or those burned by what happened with Destiny and Destiny 2 and some of the stuff that happened behind closed doors with Bungie and Activision, how much support they're actually going to show the company going forward if they develop Destiny 3, which I'm pretty sure that they're going to do so. Destiny's not one of my go-to games, but if I was a hardcore Destiny player and I stood by Bungie through all this time, I'm not so sure I would pledge my support that quickly when the next Destiny card turns over. Because there's only so much that a person who invests monetarily in a product, be it $60 or $100 or $200 or however much you may have invested in Destiny and Destiny 2 at this point, there's a limit to how much they're willing to put up with. But beyond that, I think it's a good thing that these two companies stepped away from each other so they can focus on stuff that makes them both internally happy and makes them money in the process, which is why we're all here in the first place. Is this good? Is this bad? Let me know down below in the comment section, and I hope you guys have a fantastic and wonderful day. We'll see you guys in our next video. Take care.